Io non vedo. Aspetta un attimo. Un secondo. Ok. Quando vuoi andiamo. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this panel on grant opportunities for journalists. The guest today will be Marie Lefebvre Sadon, which is the head of Earth investigation programs at journalismfund.eu. Hello, good morning, Marie. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone, and nice to meet you. Nice to see you're sitting in the room and not behind the computer.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, and something we're not that used to much anymore. And it's great to have you. Thank you for being here today. I was just introducing you. So she is the head of Earth investigation programs at journalismfund.eu, which is a non-profit organization based in Brussels since '98, if I'm not mistaken. And they basically administer funds from private and public donors to journalists who have great ideas for investigation all across Europe and beyond, but as we perfectly well know, often don't have the necessary funds and financial stability to carry out all the necessary steps and research to actually produce the content which the public is interested in. And this is a great opportunity for us journalists to talk about such subjects, because this is the second day of a workshop, Marie, and we have covered, I think, extensively the issues with journalism in Italy and in the world today. And we've come to the point of having accepted that newspapers might be in trouble and have been for quite some time, but this does not mean necessarily that journalism cannot move forward. Of course, this is all well and good, but we have to actually come up with solutions for not just for newspapers and online outlets, but also for journalists who maybe want to freelance and they have to find ways to sustain themselves and actually produce the work that they want to produce. And opportunities are out there, but they are sometimes much less known than the problems. And this is why we asked Marie to come here today to tell us about what they do at Journalism Fund and why it's so important, and what opportunities you guys might actually be able to take advantage of moving forward. And I think I've said more than enough, and I'll leave the floor to Marie and thank her again for being here.
Good morning, everyone, again, and thank you for the introduction. Perhaps I will share my screen with you and we can go over a short presentation. I don't know to what extent everybody can see the video. Can you?
No, you should add your presentation by clicking share in the bar below, and slide, I think it should be called, and you should upload it directly from your computer.
Yes, I will ask you just 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what we are going to do is, I'm very sorry because I've never used StreamYard before, so I have no clue how to.
Okay, do you see the button share next to invite below? From the StreamYard interface, you should be able to, there's a drop-down menu, reversed.
Okay, it's the navigate. It says the navigator cannot share my screen. So I'm going to share with you my presentation, and then There are a lot of things you might not be interested in this presentation. We will go over the most fascinating information for you guys, journalists. So I will lead you to how we go over the first pages.
Yeah, but we still cannot see. Maybe you can send it over to my
Yeah,
email.
I'm sending it to you now because it says my navigator cannot.
Okay.
Apologies for this.
Oh, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, so if everyone can see me, sorry for that. I'm not an IT expert. Indeed, I work for Journalism Fund and I oversee the Earth Investigation Program, which actually has two components. One that is very interesting for you because it's dedicated to journalists, teams of journalists, and another one that is dedicated for actually organizations. So while we wait for the presentation, I will just go over what we do at Journalism Fund. So basically, we're a very independent body. We connect journalists between donors and teams of journalists who need support for their investigation. So we have a very independent and transparent process where we don't directly actually select the projects that are being supported, but we have external juries that are composed of prominent and expert journalists in their different fields we work in. So for the Earth program, we have environmental journalists and data journalists that are prominent in the field, that actually are the ones selecting the projects that you apply or you will eventually apply for. So if we have the presentation up and running soon. So I'd like to say that the Earth program started last year. journalismfund.eu received a grant from, great, thank you so much. Received a grant from the Arcadia Fund, which is a philanthropic fund based in the UK. And so we have a 6-year running program, which is one of our most important programs. And we will be having calls for applications for projects and investigation projects almost every couple of months. So we can go over the first slide. Sorry, we can scroll down the presentation. Sorry, yeah. So I won't go over the details of too much of what is our organization, because again, I think you're more interested into our grant program. And again, I can share the presentation if you want to know more. So we can scroll down to the first grant programs if you want. Yep. Very good, great. Exactly. So we can start here. So I will go over the other programs that are also relevant to you. We have the European Cross-Border Grant Program, which is the oldest grant program of journalismfund.eu. It was created in 2009, and it's still running today, and it has many different donors behind that you can read at the bottom of this slide, actually. So this cross-border grant program is dedicated for teams of journalists. You have to be 2 journalists at least, and from 2 different countries. So the topic is not very narrowed. You can actually apply with any topics you like and you're interested in, unlike some of the other grant programs that we have. So I would say that this is the most flexible grant program that we have available at the organization. And so up to today, we have around 200K available throughout the year over 4 applications rounds. So we can go over the next slide. Yes, so this is our newest grant program, and actually the first deadline, which is not correct on this slide, is 7th of July, 2022. So this is a EU-funded grant program. It is aimed also at cross-border investigative team of journalists. But basically, while the other grant programs are more any topics at any level, at country level and so on, that one aims to look into in-depth topics at local level. So meaning, at a city level or a very specific location level, but it still needs to be a team of journalists that will look into a similar topic in 2 different locations, basically. We can go over the specifics of that grant program afterwards with your questions if you want. So that call will also have 6 calls per year, and there will be 100,000 euros per each call. That grant program specifically also will implement a training program that is dedicated to journalists, and it will be basically any kind of topic relevant to the journalists. So I believe we will have a survey going around the journalists to assess the needs of the journalistic community as well. We can go over the next program. Yes, so this is the one that, in my opinion, is the most interesting, because I'm in charge of this program with a colleague of mine. But so this is also one of the most recent grant program, the Earth program. So on the one hand, you have the ones that is more dedicated for investigation for teams of journalists. So again, cross-border, so meaning you need to be 2 journalists from 2 different countries. And also you can apply with a media organization or a news outlet. So it's quite flexible in terms of the team. You can be 3, 4 journalists and a news outlet or any media organization that will actually submit one project. So the topic here, obviously, we are looking into environmental affairs or climate change topics that are often related to Europe. So what does it mean? I mean, this means that you can actually write a story about somewhere in Brazil or somewhere in Colombia or in Bangladesh, but that story needs to be somehow related to a policy issue in Europe or to something that can impact policy making in Europe. So you want to look into the wrongdoings, for example, of European companies in Brazil or in Mexico, for example. So that story does not need to be happening in Europe. It can happen anywhere in the world, but you may have and want to have in mind that it needs to pinpoint at somehow European related issue. So for this grant program, we have 400,000 euros per call. So we have 4 calls per year, and the next one will be in July. Since the program started so far, we had 3 calls, and so far we support now 59 teams of journalists and media outlets for an investigation. And as you can read on this slide, so the different topics that we look into are, of course, environmental topics and climate change, but teams are working on deforestation, sea pollution, human health, and so on. And as I said previously, this program is supported by the philanthropic fund Arcadia, based in the UK. So I'm guessing you would be most interested into this grant program because you're a journalist. But yet I want to mention the next slide, the second part of this grant, of this Earth program, which is grants that we do provide to media organizations or media outlets. So this grant program is focusing on building the capacities of environmental journalists, especially young environmental journalists. So we seek to partner with organizations that can deliver training programs and development programs over a certain period of time, and in the end, perhaps to guide the journalist to write a story and so on. So for this, we have 3 calls per year, and the amount of the call per year is around 84,000 euros. So far we had also 3 calls, and we have 8 organizations that are being supported. I can give you examples of these organizations. So we have the Thomson Foundation, Internews in Ukraine. We have also 2 other programs in Ukraine. Ukraine has been quite of a highlight recently, especially for this kind of program. So voila, this is the second part of this grant program. It is not on this slide, but I aim to mention this. We can go over to the next slide. But under the Earth program, there is one interesting component, which is the training program. So we launched our training program about 2 weeks ago with a very short webinar looking into the context of writing an environmental story. We had 2 speakers, prominent speakers, who are Stéphane Aurel from Le Monde in France, and Mark Shapiro. He's a professor at UC Berkeley. And so basically they went over how to contextualize your environmental story and how you can link basically your local environmental stories to broader climate change topics. And what is basically, what is the ultimate goal that your story can have, and what impact you can have in terms of policy. We can go over these questions afterwards as well. So we basically had this webinar, and the idea is that the Earth program will have a training program aimed at any journalist in the world. It will be organized in-house by us, or we will also partner with other organizations. And the idea is to go into very in-depth specific topics of environmental journalism. So if you want to be informed about this training program, you're very free to keep track of what we do and to be part of the mailing list and so on. So that's about it for the Earth program. I will go over the next grant program that we have at Journalism Fund, sorry, which is the Modern Slavery Unveiled program. So this grant program aims also at teams of journalists to support investigation that focuses very specifically on exploitation of Asian victims of human trafficking and forced labor in Europe. So basically, these teams of journalists should be one from Asia and one from Europe. So we have 4 calls per year, and we have an amount of 320,000 per call. So there is also a training program. Actually, we have a webinar next week on this very specific program, if you're interested. And the project is supported by Porticus. So this is another very narrowed down grant program that we have at the organization. We can go over the next slide. Thank you. Yes, so this is the, I'm not sure to what extent this is, you can go to the previous one, sorry. I don't think we have to go over this one because it's mostly dedicated to journalists in Belgium. So since you're in Italy, I mean, I don't think that's very relevant to you. We can pass on, basically. Yep. That's one very important point that I would like to share with you is that when you apply to Journalism Fund, well, not only we give you money to write a story, but we can also accompany you into the process of writing your story. We have a pool of very prominent journalists that can become a mentor for your project for writing your story. So usually it's part of the contract that we sign together. You can be, you can say, well, you can basically say that you need a mentor, and it is for free for you. We pay for that person, and that person can give you around 4 or 5 sessions of mentorship throughout the entire process of writing your story. So you can actually have a mentor that is focusing exactly on what you're writing, so more technical knowledge of the content of what you're writing. But you can also have someone that has different skills. For example, you can ask for a prominent data journalist, for example, or a journalist that is very specialized in visualization, for example. So yeah, that's a very important aspect of our grant programs, and it's cross-cutting through all our grant programs. You can go on to the next slide. Yeah, what we do also is, well, we go to many conferences in the world to promote the grant program and to meet journalists, to meet organizations and so on. But it's not only us. We like to give the floor to supported journalists. So as part of the grant program, often, well, if you write a great story, you might actually end up traveling to a lot of conferences to share about your story and your experience. So we like to promote that as well, and to give the floor more to the supported community of journalists. We can go on to the next slide. Well, this is more organizational, so we don't have to go over this. But I would like to say that more and more, our organization is very much looking into the impact of what we do and what we fund, obviously. And we would like to say that how important it is to know why you're writing your story. What are you expecting also from your story? Is it to inform the public, or is it to go beyond this? I know we know this is a very large debate, but we think that that a story, especially when it comes to environmental topics, can actually be much more than just informing the public. So we're trying to look into this. We're open to any discussion with any journalist on this. I think we can close the presentation for now, and we can go into the specifics of the grant programs if you want. Thank you.
Oh, okay. We're back. Thank you very much, Marie. It's been very interesting, I think, for all of us to learn about just how broad the spectrum is of what you can do and how Journalism Fund can help you. Because I think the most interesting aspect, at least one of the most interesting, is how your grants address a problem which is not so often talked about, which is as journalists, we are meant to criticize the power structures, right? But these power structures are globalized. So they, as you mentioned, one of your grants addresses this very problem, right? So maybe an Italian company is doing great environmental damage in Libya, and not necessarily is something that happens that Italian journalists can collaborate with a Libyan news outlet. And maybe you have no connections and no way of even funding such a collaboration. But there are opportunities, as Maria has talked about, to get in touch with the Libyan journalist, which is something I wanted to ask you about, which is I saw that sometimes you even address this very problem of helping journalists across borders make connection with each other, which is something that you do. If you could talk a bit about that in more detail.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry I forgot to mention this. This is a very important aspect as well. We do connect people to one another. So basically, you can reach out to us and tell us, well, I'm interested to write a story about this in this country, and so on. And we can also help you find a person that would be based in this country, or find another journalist in Europe or elsewhere in the world that is actually expert in that topic, and so on. So you can reach out to us in terms of networking if you need support to compose a team as well. So that's very important also in the scope of our work as well.
That's very interesting. I have one more question for you, and maybe I'll leave the floor to our audience. Maybe they have something they'd like for you to talk about a bit more. But the main thing I'd be interested in is we have an audience of young journalists, mainly under 35 years of age. And maybe in Italy, we are not so used to send applications for grants, which is something that it's done, but it's done so seldom. I'd like to ask you, what is the most recurring mistake or shortfall you see in applications coming from journalists? What do you need to do to make your idea heard and appealing and having more chances to get funded? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much for this question. That's so important. Well, I want to say two things. So the first one is that you can reach out to us also, because we do give pre-application advice. So you can come up with your idea. So not only we would help you connect with a team, for example, and other journalists, but we can also give you tips in how to write your application. Of course, how to navigate around the application platform, and how to make sure that your story or your project presented gets attention from the jury, for example. So most often, the most recurrent mistake that we see going through the application, or that the jury sees, I am to say, is sometimes the very thin confusion, I would say, between a journalistic project and a research project. This is something that we often see, and that is a very important question that the jury often highlights when we look into the application. I think what's important also, because we've seen also shortages in that matter as well, it is very important to know where is your story heading. It is not only enough to say, I want to write about this, but I think there is one question now in our application platform is somehow, what is the impact of your story? So, and why is your story so needed? Why does it need funding? So you might want to really look into this and say, you know, what are the reasons your story is so important to the public, first of all, but then also to inform the general public debate, for sure, but also can it have an impact in terms of, well, can an organization use my story and use it for advocacy and for lobbying, in the good sense of lobbying, of course, especially when it comes to environmental topics. So I think there is a wish to see that as well, to understand what is the effect of your story beyond. It is not only just about writing your story. So that's the two important points, but also I aim to say that the budgets need to be very realistic. You have to understand that at our organization and the jury also, they look into the very specific of the budget and the feasibility of the project. So it's very important that you apply according to where you're from and with a budget according to where you are from. So you, for example, somebody from France or from Italy or from Burundi, from Chile, cannot apply for the same budget, for example. It needs to be based on the cost of life as well in your country. So that's very important as well. A journalist shouldn't come up with a massive salary that no journalist in the world can get. That's often one of the first things that we see in the budget. Sometimes it's not realistic at all.
Yeah.
But it's okay to try.
All of a sudden you expect to earn 50,000 euros a year.
Exactly. We all know that doesn't make it fair, but we all know the average, salary of our community of journalists. And it's not, it needs to be, according to these lines as well. Also, the feasibility of your project in terms of security, time frame, depending on where you write your story, obviously. If you have any specific questions, I can go over these.
If someone from the audience has a question, she'll be happy to answer it. Sì. Vieni pure qua. C'è il microfono.
Okay. Hi, good morning, and thank you for being here for us. I tried to apply for a grant of the Journalism Fund, and the biggest difficult I found it was to ask for the letters of intent from the news outlets. So my question is about how to ask the letters of intent. So do you have any advice about how to ask the letters of intent from news outlets? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And it's true, we have not gone over this. And that's a very important aspect of our application platform and process, which is that you do have to submit letters of intent from media outlets, meaning that they will intend to publish your story when you've wrote the story. So, sorry. Basically, it's hard to say. You have to network and you have to connect to this media outlet, and you have to basically catch the attention of this media outlet, and you have to make sure that your story is appealing enough to them as well, so that they want to advertise it and to publish it. But one thing we can do, and that we support, is if you have trouble finding the right contacts. I know it's very hard to just Google that media outlet, finding the general email of the newspaper and just sending out your pitch. Basically, it's very hard in terms of connecting with the people. So one thing we do is you can reach out to us and say, hey, I'd like to publish in that media outlet or in this country for that matter, and we can give you the right contact because you have a huge database of media outlets and the people who are in charge of whatever section within this paper or another. So we can give you the contacts actually. So that's something you can reach out for. We will not actually introduce you directly to support, getting a letter of intent, but we will give you the right contact. And that actually helps because I know sometimes it's a bit difficult to maneuver around the media outlet and get the right contact.
Okay. Any more questions? There's one more.
Good morning. Sorry for my English, and I want to ask you, as a non-profit organization, where do you find the money to survive? That's the question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Well, that's a very important one. Where do we find the money to survive? Well, we're a non-profit organization, so that means, well, you know what it means. But basically, there is a high attention over the media community in Europe and the journalistic community in Europe. And we find money mostly in the philanthropic sector. So the philanthropic sector funds largely the journalism era, let's say, in Europe and beyond. So yeah, this is private and philanthropic donors. But these donors, you need to understand that they do not interfere in our work. These donors are very flexible we're very free in the work we do, basically. So we also have, it's a truth, we also have money from the European Commission as well, but it's minor compared to how the philanthropic sectors has enabled our organizations and all the other organizations like us to survive and to support the journalistic sector the past 15 years, basically, because there is less and less support from the states anyways, the different states, and absolutely no support from the public sector, or almost none. So yes, the philanthropic sector is key in that matter.
Okay, do we have one more? Okay, yeah. So yeah, I think this last question highlights a very important part of your organization's work, which is to mediate between donors and journalists, because of course you can maybe get a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, for example, but then you have to openly state that, and that someone might call into question your intent or your integrity. But if you have an intermediary, because if I understand correctly, most of your grants, unless it's stated otherwise, have anonymous donors, right?
Well, we don't have anonymous donors, actually. They are very clear on our website and on each page that I shared with you. It's largely, the Open Society Foundation, Porticus Foundation, Arcadia Fund. Actually, it's not anonymous and it's no secret to anyone. It is actually public information that you can find either on their website or our website. The particularity of philanthropic donors is that they're very discreet. They don't show off. Let's say, I apologize for this expression, but it's not the same thing as having a donor from a state or from a bilateral donor from either the state or the European Commission that is much more out there, basically, in the picture. So philanthropic donors are very discreet. However, it's not anonymous or it's no secret to anyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to go over, if we have time, but maybe we do, 5 more minutes, about your mentorship program. So how does one go about it? Is there other specific sectors and aspects that you can ask Journalism Fund to be helped with, and how does it work in detail?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so first of all, when you apply to any grant program, you will be asked in the application form whether you need a mentor for your project or not. So actually, it's very interesting because I can share with you, I've worked on this data a couple of days ago. For Earth program, we have about 35% of teams that are asking for a mentor. So that's a very interesting number because it shows that there is interest in this mentorship program and there is a need. So you'll be asked in the application platform. And then depending on your project, as I mentioned previously, you can ask very specifically for somebody who is specialized in that topic or another. So deforestation, waste management, absitus or so on. And so then, or you ask for someone who is more specialized in the technical things like data, managing data visualization, and so on. So it's a very open thing. You are selected for a grant, then we have a chat, we have the contract process. During that process, we discuss, you tell us what you need, what you want, we search in our database, then we suggest names, and we connect you to that mentor. You are also free to tell us, hey, we know that journalist, we like this guy, we want to work with this guy as a journalist, as a mentor, sorry. So you can, it can also go both ways. We provide you with names and you're happy with it, or you know someone, you have someone in mind and you dream of having him or her as a mentor, well, you can also tell us. So that's how it goes.
Yeah. Okay. We have one question from one of our online viewers, which is about Ukraine. I was wondering, this person was wondering if you could talk a bit about how you're covering Ukraine, if you have already published articles funded by your programs, and how they link to environmental damages due to the war, or what are the subjects, if you are aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So that's a very important question because it's in the highlight of course, of the realities for the past 4 months. I want to first say that Journalism Fund is a very independent organization. So we do not speak out on politics or any issues going on in the world. We remain very neutral and independent. However, so far, it is true that we have received projects coming from Ukraine for this very specific investigation. The truth is that it is slightly complicated for the teams currently to conduct their investigation, especially for the ones, of course, in the eastern of Ukraine. What I can share with you, and that also is very public, it's on our website, we've advertised about it on the website and on social media, is that we are supporting 2 organizations as part of the Earth program that are training young journalists to report on environmental issues related to the war. And that's quite of a key topic in Ukraine right now, and could be in the future. So this is how we've basically responded to what's going on in Ukraine as well. We're supporting 3 projects there under the capacity building of journalists in Ukraine. And they're very much focused on the damages and the possible damages of the war on the environment.
Okay, thank you. If there's no more questions, I think we can conclude this session, and I'd like to thank Marie for her accepting to be here and telling us about these very interesting opportunities, which I hope our attendees will pick up on.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Can I just say one last word?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just want to say that you can all go to our website, journalismfund.eu. You can also go to our Twitter page, to our Facebook group, our Facebook page, LinkedIn account as well. On all over this social media, you will find info related to the grant programs, how to apply, and so on. You can also contact us directly, info@journalismfund.eu, and you can get any advice you need. So please get in touch if you're interested.
Okay. Thank you very much again. Have a good day. Thank you for being here.